It's Thursday, March 7th, and I am ready to go to the movies. I'm going to go see Captain Marvel tonight. It's opening Thursday evening, even though everybody says it opens on Friday. I'm going to go see it Thursday night, opening night. I think this is the first time I'm going to an MCU movie on opening night. And really, I haven't seen all the MCU films. I haven't seen all of them in the theater to begin with, but I haven't seen all the MCU films either. You see, when the movies first started coming out back in, 2008? I wasn't all that excited. I'd been away from comics for a little while, and besides, it looked like Iron Man was based more on the Ultimate version of Iron Man than the Iron Man I grew up reading. Same thing for Captain America and Thor and all of those. It wasn't until a little bit later that I finally decided to dive in and watched Iron Man at home. I think I watched it streaming. So, I had the experience finally of watching an MCU film, and, I kind of liked it. But really, at that point, the intention was that I was going to go through and watch all the MCU films leading up to where everybody else was, where all my friends were. Because, comic books, I grew up reading them, and they've never really been all that far away from me. Even if I wasn't collecting anymore, I still wanted to, kind of get caught up and see what was going on. And, I love me some superheroes, and I was always a big Marvel fan. So I kind of went through and I watched the big ones. I watched Iron Man, all the Captain America films. I didn't watch any of the Thor movies until Thor Ragnarok came along. And I did watch the Avengers. And then, of course, Avengers Age of Ultron and everything else since then. Doctor Strange, Black Panther, the Ant-Man films. And I dig them. I think they're fun. They're not a patch on the original comics by any means. In fact, I still feel like they are based more on the Ultimate incarnation of what some of the original heroes were versus what I grew up reading from the Marvel 616 proper. But, it is what it is. This is a completely different medium, so when something like Spider-Man comes along and Aunt May is a much younger version of Aunt May that we read in the comics, well, you just kind of have to roll with it because, again, these movies weren't necessarily made for the die-hard comic book fans. These movies were made for those who, know who the characters are, but they're movies first. They serve the movies first. So, that all said, Captain Marvel. Well, I've never really had a strong attachment to the character. This is the first time in all of the MCU that a movie is coming out based on a character that I just don't have that strong attachment to. I mean, Black Panther might have been pushing it, but at least I knew who Black Panther was, and I read Black Panther in the Avengers, and I knew the basics, that sort of thing. Captain Marvel's had a real screwy history when it comes to the comics themselves, and I'm guessing that this film is not going to touch on, it can't yet touch on the fact that she had an encounter with Rogue of the X-Men, and that's how Rogue got her powers. It's probably not going to touch on the whole she's sexually assaulted and then gives birth to her sexual assaulter. Messed up storyline. Probably not going to touch on any of the other storylines where she was using a different name, like Photon or Binary. Or Miss Marvel. So, yeah, I don't know what to expect going in, other than what I've seen in the trailers. And yeah, we'll see. I just never really had the connection to the character. I knew about the Kree background and all that, but yeah, we'll see. Part of it too, I think, is that I never really had a strong connection to the cosmic side of Marvel Comics. I preferred my comic book characters to be, humans or mutants or altered humans or whatever. I wasn't a big fan of the big spacefaring thing, and I don't know if that was because I felt like I couldn't relate to those characters as easily as I could to, say, like a Captain America or a Doctor Strange, because at least I knew where Captain America and Doctor Strange came from instead of some planet somewhere that some comic book writer made up, probably Bill Mantlo. I mean, my favorite Marvel character is kind of sort of cosmic, or at least he's gone cosmic, but again, I just responded better to the Avengers and the X-Men, the Fantastic Four, a lot of the solo books. Just that was my jam. So, yeah, that said, I really liked the Guardians of the Galaxy films. I liked both of them. I thought they were both very, very strong. Not just because there's one scene in the second Guardians film that takes place on Contraxia, and since my favorite character from Marvel is half Contraxian, maybe we'll see him someday. I doubt it. But anyway, we'll see what happens. I am eager to see this film, but there's a part of me that feels like I'm going to see the movie to just kind of bide my time until Avengers Endgame comes out, because that's one I'm really excited for. And I actually took a page out of my friend Tom Doffel's book I stopped watching all the trailers for Avengers Endgame. I didn't want any more, which was really difficult because a lot of the YouTube channels I subscribe to have tons of theories about what's going to happen in Endgame. Who's going to live? Who's going to die? Who's going to show up? What will the new heroes be? What will the post-credit sequence be? How many post-credit sequences will there be? I don't want to know any of that anymore. I saw the trailers that are available as of today, but that's it. I'm done. So we'll see what happens. I'm eager to see how that turns out. I'm eager to see how the end credit sequence in Captain Marvel ties into Avengers Endgame. I hope it's an actual tie-in. I hope they actually shot something specifically for this film instead of doing like what they did in Doctor Strange, where they just show a clip from Thor Ragnarok and use that as the end credit sequence. I don't want to see that. I want to see something original just because I like to see original content. But in the end, I'm just looking forward to being surprised by the film. I'm eager to see what's going to happen. I'm eager to see how it plays to an audience because there has been some controversy about the film. I'm ready to go. And here, I look at my Fitbit like it's a watch. In a few minutes, my ride's going to be here to pick me up, and I'm heading out to the theater. I wanted to record last night at the theater, but it was so dark. When I pulled out the camera, you could barely see anything. It was just a big grainy mess. So it didn't work out. And last night when I got home, I was just beat, man. And on top of that, I needed to have some time to kind of think about what I thought about Captain Marvel. Yeah, that makes sense. I needed to kind of work on my thoughts a little bit. Overall, thumbs up, thumbs down? Yeah, it's a thumbs up. I enjoyed the movie quite a bit. I thought it was a lot of fun. I thought it was pretty well paced once you got past about the 1/3 mark. And I thought the performances were really solid, and I loved the chemistry between Captain Marvel and Nick Fury. Fury. I loved their chemistry, their back and forth. I would have liked to have seen maybe a little bit more of an indication of what would lead that Nick Fury, to what he would become in the later modern day films. This is a period piece. They've made no secret of that. It does take place in the mid-90s. The blockbuster video and all the songs on the soundtrack, which this is something I want to comment on because this is something that really kind of is starting to get to me. I know I said earlier that I love the Guardians of the Galaxy films. I think they're great. They're a lot of fun. But they've really done something to the MCU. The films that have been coming out since then, a lot of them have a pop music soundtrack. A soundtrack, not just a film score, which is something that I'm totally down for, and I love my film scores. Even though now that I think about it, I don't know if the Captain Marvel film score was memorable. I'd have to give it another listen or two. But there is so much music in this film to really make sure that we all know it's the mid-90s. It was a little distracting for me, which is something that they did in Guardians, and they even had the immigrant song in Thor Ragnarok. I don't need any of that. I really don't. I feel like, and maybe I'll get a little bit of hate for this, I feel like it's lazy. It's lazy storytelling. I know that they have immediate touchstone feelings to the 90s when you hear Nirvana or TLC. I understand. But, really? All you're doing is putting together a playlist that you can sell later, maybe a CD soundtrack album. Do they still do CD soundtrack albums? Down the line as a piece of merch. I don't need that. Just not needed. At least they pulled music that was not part of the Disney family. They had some Universal Music Group stuff. They had some other things. Anyway, I mentioned Nick Fury. I really liked what he did here, and it was really cool to see Agent Coulson again. The de-aging technology they did to make them both look younger. I don't know if it was all makeup with Coulson, but I understand there was some digital work done with Samuel L. Jackson. I thought it worked. I didn't find it distracting. I was a little worried because we know what Samuel L. Jackson looked like in the 90s. So I was a little concerned that they were going to make him look a little, I don't know, phony or plastic looking. Rather, instead, it looked like a really, really good deep fake using younger Samuel L. Jackson facial imagery. I liked that. Brie Larson, I thought she did just fine, if not really well. She is a different kind of hero when it comes to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Yes, this was kind of sort of an origin story, so we have to go through all of those steps and those paces when it comes to this superhero story. And Brie Larson handled that just fine. I think she is going to be very interesting to see in Avengers Endgame. So fingers and tentacles crossed that it turns out well and that her style meshes well with Captain America, Black Widow, and the like. Did this movie surprise me? Well, as I said earlier, Captain Marvel was not somebody that I was super attached to growing up, but I did have some familiarity with her. I did read her in the Avengers, and after the Heroes Return storyline and the Avengers were kind of back in full force, she had some issues with alcoholism that Tony Stark kind of walked her through and helped her deal with. So I mean, I know a little bit about the character then, but the character that we saw on screen was nothing like that at all. Also, I have no idea if in the comics she had the same friendships and relationships with some of the people that we saw in the film. There's an age thing that happens too, and I'm going to chalk that up to the superpowers that she has. Yeah, be interesting to see how that is explained, if it's explained. Did this tie into Avengers Infinity War the way that I wanted it to? Kinda. There were some things that popped up that I was not expecting. Like I said earlier, there were some surprises, and when one thing does turn up, and I'm intentionally being vague here because I don't want to give you a lot of spoilers, when something does turn up, I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense, didn't see that coming. So that was kind of nice to see, but the big thing that really surprised me was something that could have been used to lead into Phase 4 of the MCU, and I don't think it will be based on what we saw in this film. So it was really interesting to me, somebody who, has read the comics and accidentally stumbled across a bunch of theory videos about what's happening next in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I don't think what a lot of people were thinking was going to happen is going to happen. Again, intentionally being vague here. But it was interesting and a nice twist, a nice shift in storytelling. And really, the best stories are the ones that surprise you, right? That give you something a little bit more. Comic book storytelling, and really the same probably applies to movies and novels and pretty much all written entertainment. You have to be careful because you want to give the audience what they want, but if all you do is give them what they expect, they're going to get bored. So you have to introduce certain twists and turns as you go, and I feel like Captain Marvel, the film, did that. Now, let's talk about, vaguely, the controversies regarding the women empowerment, the feminism that was supposedly going to be in this film that was going to make it very uncomfortable for me, a white man, watching the film. That's a bunch of garbage. It was not something that made me feel isolated. I didn't feel like I was being attacked. I had no problem whatsoever with Captain Marvel and the other characters in the film that happen to be women. There is a gender swap between a character that you see in the comics versus a character that we see on screen. And I can go back and forth on whether or not that worked for me in terms of being true to the comic, but in terms of being true to the film, it definitely worked. I also had absolutely no problem with some of the lines of dialogue that Captain Marvel delivers that really, if you dig into them, could be interpreted as somebody saying, "I am woman, hear me roar." So what if it did? You can watch the movie and you can get that out of it. Or you can sit there and just let the superhero blockbuster action wash over you and not read a lot into it. You could go either way. And those, my friends, I feel like are the best kinds of films. You can have a blockbuster superhero film where you go in and just sit down with a much too large bucket of popcorn and enjoy, check out for a couple of hours and then call it good. Or, if you want, you can start peeling back the layers and see what's bubbling underneath. And I really appreciate and respect the filmmakers for this. I had no idea it was co-directed, the two directors. I thought that was fine. And the script, the screenplay, the dialogue, I had no problem with whatsoever. It was interesting to see some callbacks to the MCU, what we know about it, other characters turning up and seeing where they may have come from. There is one moment that was a little jokesy, a little cutesy for me, that leads into something that is in the modern day MCU that, okay, it's cute, it's clever, it explains something, but it was almost fan service. You'll see what I mean when you see the film. The post-credit sequences. Well, I have a sneaking suspicion that the mid-credit sequence really is just footage from Avengers Endgame that was pulled out and inserted into this movie. I would love if it wasn't, but I don't think that's going to be the case. And then there is a post-credit sequence, which is cute. It's funny. It's played for laughs. It's probably not really needed for full understanding of what's going on in the MCU. It's kind of just a funny ha-ha. I had an issue chronologically with the order in which those sections were presented. What I mean by that, and this may be considered a spoiler, we do see a clip, like I said, I think it's a clip from Avengers Endgame in the mid-credit sequence, which is modern day current MCU. And then The final end credit sequence is from events that took place long before Avengers Endgame or Avengers Infinity War. Who knows when it... Actually, it would have had to have been before... Wow. It would have had to have been before a lot of the MCU. So what we've got here is Captain Marvel, 1995. Credits start to roll. Then we go up to 2018 or 19 or 16 or whatever it is they're saying the year is in the MCU. Then we have the rest of the credits, and then we go back again. Tonally, I understand. You want to kind of go off in that kind of ha-ha kind of moment, maybe. But chronologically, it was a little awkward. Tonal concerns about the film. The movie is a little on the light side, which again is something that has been creeping into the films since Guardians of the Galaxy, and probably much earlier than that too. There have been better videos on YouTube explaining the bathos that's been turning up in a lot of the Marvel films, where you don't really get to enjoy or engage or get into the drama because there's always a quippy one-liner here or there. However, this film was smart in that it is established at the beginning of the film during some dialogue that the character does do this quippy kind of thing. It's not just a screenwriter saying, haha, gotcha. It's an actual character moment. And a lot of the quippiness back and forth are between the two leads. And it makes their chemistry much more enjoyable and real and makes you care about their relationship. But then makes me wonder what happened to Fury between this film and Iron Man that led him to be a little bit more dark. So I'm sitting here editing the video, and then I realized I didn't mention one of the coolest things about Captain Marvel, and that was the Stan Lee tribute. Those who've seen the movie know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to ruin it for you, but it was pretty special. In the end, I enjoyed the film. I thought it was really good. I'm not going to see it again on the big screen because, well, I just don't have time for that. But I will watch it at home, I'm sure. Will I watch it before I watch something like Doctor Strange or Black Panther again? I don't know. Maybe. It is kind of fun to see younger Nick Fury, and it is fun to see Captain Marvel doing her thing and learning how she became practically the most powerful being in the MCU, which, wow, the balance of power in Endgame is going to be insane. Yeah. But it's good. Is it in my top 10 of MCU films? You know, that might be a video that I'll do in the future. Thanks for watching. I appreciate you spending some time with me here. I'd love to know what you think of Captain Marvel. Did you like the film? Did you not like the film? Try to keep it pretty spoiler-free, but if you are going to talk about spoilers, maybe leave a few lines and let people know it's a spoiler because you don't want to ruin the film for anybody. But I'd love to hear your thoughts, so please consider leaving a comment down below. If you liked this video, please give me a thumbs up, and please consider subscribing to the Comicstalgia YouTube channel. I know there's not a lot of content here now, but I am going to be ramping this up throughout the year as we get closer to Endgame, of course, and I've got a few other things in the works. Things featuring me and one of my oldest friends talking about the Fantastic Four, talking about the very first comic book that I read that got me into the Marvel Universe. I've just got a lot of things in the works, and I'm excited to share them with you, and I'm excited for you to see them. So please subscribe and maybe even hit that notification bell.